At 3 in the morning, Emily Carter's phone vibrated on the nightstand. She was already awake, staring at the ceiling, because sleep had become difficult during the weeks before Christmas. She reached for the phone and saw a message from her daughter, Danielle. The message was short, but it changed everything. "Mom, I know you paid for the house, but Linda doesn't want you at Christmas dinner. Please understand." Emily read it once, then again, then a third time. She did not cry, she did not call Danielle. She simply sat in the darkness with the phone in her hand. The woman who had spent years protecting her daughter suddenly felt like a stranger in her own family. If this story already has your heart racing, welcome. I'm glad you're here at Heartline Narratives. Before we go further, drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from? Your country, your city. I read your comments, and I always love knowing where these stories reach. Note, this story contains fictional elements for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real people, names, or places is purely coincidental. But the lesson behind this story is something every family should remember. Let's continue. Emily was 58 years old. She was a widow, an accountant, and the kind of mother who had spent most of her life putting her daughter first. 4 years earlier, she had been happy when Danielle introduced her to Michael. He was polite, educated, and worked as an engineer. He spoke about his future with confidence. Emily believed her daughter had found a good man. When Danielle announced that they were getting married, Emily was one of the happiest people in the room. She helped with the wedding. She helped with the furniture. She helped with everything she could afford. Then came the day Danielle told her about the house. Danielle and Michael had found a beautiful property with a large backyard, wide windows, and enough room for the family they hoped to have one day. There was only one problem. They could not afford the full down payment. Emily did not hesitate. She had savings from years of careful work. She had planned to keep that money for her retirement, but when she saw Danielle's face, she made a decision. She paid $280,000 toward the property. The deed was placed in Emily's name. Danielle and Michael would live there, maintain the property, and eventually take care of the legal arrangements. At the time, Emily did not think about ownership. She thought about family. She thought about giving her daughter a safe home. She thought about the future. She never imagined that one day she would receive a message telling her she was not welcome there. The trouble had started soon after Michael's mother, Linda, entered their lives. Linda was elegant, confident, and very concerned about appearances. She wore expensive clothes, talked about vacations, and often spoke about the people she knew. The first time Emily met her, she prepared a large dinner at her own home. She cooked roast beef, potatoes, vegetables, and an apple pie from her mother's old recipe. Linda looked around the small house and smiled. "It is cozy," she said. Emily smiled politely, but the words stayed in her mind. Cozy, not beautiful, not warm, cozy. Linda seemed to believe that people could be measured by the size of their homes, the price of their clothes, and the restaurants they visited. Emily tried not to judge her. She wanted Danielle to be happy. Over the next year, Linda became more involved in Danielle and Michael's lives. She gave opinions about furniture. She criticized the curtains. She suggested different decorations. She told Danielle that a successful woman needed to present herself differently. Emily noticed the changes but remained quiet. Then Linda started making comments about the house. "It has so much potential," she would say. "With the right improvements, it could look completely different." Emily knew exactly what Linda meant. She believed the house did not look good enough. Still, Emily said nothing. It was Danielle's home, and Emily wanted her daughter to enjoy it. Emily continued helping. She bought a dining table. She paid for part of the sofa. She helped choose appliances. Whenever Danielle needed something, Emily tried to help. She never kept a record of what she had given. She never asked for praise. She believed mothers did not need receipts for love. But slowly, things changed. Danielle stopped calling every day, then every few days. Conversations that once lasted an hour became short messages. Sometimes Danielle would say she was busy. Sometimes she would mention plans with Linda. Emily tried to understand. She told herself that marriage changed people's lives. She told herself that Danielle was building her own family. But the distance kept growing. On Danielle's birthday, Emily planned a special dinner at the restaurant where they had celebrated together for years. She invited Michael and Danielle's closest friends. She sent the invitation early. Danielle called that evening. "Mom, there is a problem," she said. Linda had already planned a surprise birthday dinner. The event was at Linda's house, and Michael's entire family would attend. Emily was hurt. She reminded Danielle that she had already planned the dinner. Danielle apologized but said Linda had already paid for everything. Emily canceled the reservation. That night, she sat alone at her dining table with Danielle's birthday gift in front of her. It was a silver bracelet with a small heart charm. She had chosen it carefully. On the inside, she had planned to have the words mother and daughter engraved. She placed it back in its box. Something inside Emily had changed, although she could not yet explain what it was. A few weeks later, Emily visited Danielle's house. She had brought homemade food. When she arrived, she noticed Linda was there again. Linda looked at the food and smiled politely. "Oh, Emily, that is sweet. We already ordered dinner." Emily smiled and handed the container to Danielle. "Maybe tomorrow." Danielle thanked her. The food was never mentioned again. Emily started noticing small things. Her photograph with Danielle disappeared from the living room. Family pictures featuring Linda appeared on the walls. The guest room that Danielle had once promised would always be available for Emily was filled with boxes. When Emily asked about it, Danielle said they needed the space. Emily accepted the explanation. She always accepted the explanation. That was her problem, she later realized. She had spent years accepting things that hurt her. Then came Christmas. Emily expected Danielle to call and ask about their plans. Instead, the message came at 3 in the morning. Linda did not want her at Christmas dinner. Emily looked toward the dark window. Snow was not falling, but the neighborhood was covered in Christmas lights. Families were preparing for celebrations. Children were waiting for gifts. And somewhere across town, her daughter was preparing to celebrate Christmas in a house Emily had paid for. Emily finally typed a reply. "Understood." She pressed send and placed the phone on the table. She did not call Danielle. She did not ask Linda why. She did not beg for an invitation. Instead, Emily walked to the small cabinet in her bedroom and pulled out a folder. Inside were the original property papers. She opened them carefully. Her name was still there. Emily Carter, legal owner. She stared at the document for a long time. For years, she had thought of that house as Danielle's home, but legally, it was still hers. And for the first time, Emily wondered what would happen if she stopped acting like someone who needed permission to exist in her own daughter's life. She closed the folder and placed it back in the cabinet. She had not made a decision yet, but something had begun to wake inside her. The next morning, Emily received another message from Danielle. "Mom, please don't make this difficult. Linda just wants a peaceful Christmas." Emily stared at the words. Then she noticed something else. There was no apology, no invitation, no question about how she felt, only a request that she remain silent. Emily slowly put the phone down. She had spent years protecting Danielle from difficult truths. Now she wondered whether Danielle had ever protected her. And before Christmas arrived, Emily was going to find out exactly how much her daughter knew about Linda's plans. The next morning, Emily woke before sunrise. She had barely slept. The message from Danielle remained in her mind. "Linda just wants a peaceful Christmas." Emily kept asking herself what that meant. Why was her presence considered a problem? Why did Linda have the power to decide who attended Christmas dinner? Most importantly, why had Danielle accepted that decision so easily? Emily made coffee and sat alone at the kitchen table. On the wall was a photograph of Danielle at graduation. Emily had taken it herself. Danielle was smiling with both hands around her diploma. Emily remembered that day clearly. She had worked extra hours for months to help pay for Danielle's education. She remembered being tired but happy. Looking at the picture now, she wondered where that girl had gone. Around 9 in the morning, Danielle finally called. Emily answered after several rings. "Hi, Mom." Her voice sounded nervous. Emily kept her voice calm. "Good morning, honey." There was a long pause. Danielle said she hoped Emily understood the Christmas situation. Emily asked her a simple question. "Did Linda tell you that she doesn't want me there?" Danielle became quiet. "Mom, it's complicated." "No," Emily replied calmly. "It is not complicated. Did she say it?" Danielle sighed. "Yes." Emily closed her eyes. Hearing the answer hurt more than the message had. "And you agreed." Danielle immediately became defensive. It's not like that. Linda is very sensitive. If she gets upset, she stops talking to Michael. Then Michael becomes miserable. I just don't want another family problem. Emily looked at the photograph on the wall. So avoiding a problem with Linda is more important than hurting your mother? Danielle did not answer. That silence said enough. Emily did not argue. She told Danielle she understood and ended the call. But the betrayal did not stop there. A week later, Emily received an invitation to a small family gathering at Danielle's house. Danielle said it would be casual. Emily decided to go because she still hoped things could be repaired. She arrived carrying a homemade cheesecake. Michael opened the door. He looked surprised. "Emily, we weren't expecting you." Emily smiled. "Danielle invited me." Michael stepped aside. Inside, the house looked different. New curtains covered the windows. Expensive cushions were placed on the sofa. A large painting hung above the fireplace. Emily looked for the photograph of herself and Danielle. It was gone. Before she could ask, Linda appeared from the living room. "Emily." What a surprise. She did not move to greet her. Emily nodded politely. "Good evening, Linda." Linda looked at the cheesecake. "Oh, you brought dessert. That's kind." Then she turned to Danielle. "I hope you still have room for the lemon tart." Danielle smiled nervously. "Of course." Emily handed the cheesecake to her daughter. "Maybe someone will want it tomorrow." During dinner, Linda talked about her recent trip to Europe. She described hotels, restaurants, and expensive shops. Everyone listened. Michael laughed. Danielle nodded. Emily remained quiet. Then Linda looked around the room. "Danielle, you really should change those curtains. They make the room look smaller." Danielle immediately agreed. "I was thinking the same thing." Emily said nothing. She had helped pay for those curtains, but that no longer seemed to matter. Later that evening, Emily went upstairs to use the bathroom. She passed the room Danielle had once promised would always be hers. The door was open. Inside were boxes, old clothes, and an exercise bike. There was no bed, no chair, no space for her belongings. Her room had disappeared. Emily stood there for several seconds, then she heard Linda's voice downstairs. "She needs to understand that things are different now." Emily froze. Another voice answered. It was Michael. "She paid for the house, Mom." Linda laughed softly. "And that doesn't mean she needs to be involved in everything." Emily quietly walked away. She returned downstairs as though she had heard nothing. The next few months brought more small wounds. Danielle's calls became rare. Invitations disappeared. Family dinners were arranged without Emily. When Emily asked Danielle to meet for coffee, Danielle often said she was busy. When Emily suggested spending a weekend together, Danielle said Michael's family already had plans. Emily kept trying. She sent birthday cards. She brought food. She mailed small gifts. But every effort seemed to disappear into a wall. One afternoon, Emily received a photo from Danielle. It showed Danielle standing beside Linda at a large family gathering. Everyone was smiling. Emily looked at the picture for a long time. She realized she had become a memory instead of a member of the family. She put the phone down. Then she noticed an envelope on her table. It was from her attorney. She had originally asked him years earlier to keep copies of the property documents. She opened it. The deed was there. So were the payment records. Every document carried her name. Emily read them carefully. She had not thought about them for years. Now they looked different. The house was not simply a gift. It was an asset she legally owned. Emily called her attorney. "Mr. Romero, I need to ask you something." He listened. She explained the situation. She told him about the house, the family conflict, and the Christmas message. He asked whether she had transferred ownership. Emily said no. There was a pause. "Then the property is still yours." Emily leaned back in her chair. She had known that already, but hearing it from someone who understood the law made the reality stronger. "Could I sell it?" she asked. "If there are no other legal restrictions, yes." Emily thanked him and ended the call. She did not tell Danielle. She did not tell Michael. She certainly did not tell Linda. She wanted time to think. That evening, Danielle called again. "Mom, Christmas is going to be at our house." Emily waited. Danielle continued. "Linda is organizing everything." Emily asked quietly. "And am I invited?" There was another silence. "Mom, I don't know. I think it would be better if you understood that Linda wants it to be her family this year." Emily swallowed hard. "Her family? That's not what I meant." I know what you meant. Emily ended the call. She walked to the window and looked at the street. She could see neighbors putting up Christmas decorations. She remembered all the Christmas mornings when Danielle had been a child. Emily had made pancakes. She had hidden presents. She had stayed awake late to wrap gifts. Now her own daughter was telling her she was not part of the family Christmas. Emily opened the property folder again. She looked at the deed. Then she looked at a photograph of Danielle. Her heart still wanted to forgive her, but her mind had begun asking a different question. What if the house was the only thing keeping Linda and Michael comfortable enough to continue treating Emily like she did not matter? Emily did not know the answer yet, but she knew she needed to find out. And the next conversation with Danielle would finally force the truth into the open. Emily waited 2 days before visiting Danielle. She did not want to go while she was angry. She wanted to hear the truth without shouting, without accusations, and without giving anyone a chance to call her dramatic. When she arrived at the house, Michael opened the door. He looked surprised. "Emily, good morning. Is Danielle home?" Michael hesitated. "Yes, she's upstairs." Emily walked inside. It still felt strange to call the place her daughter's home. She had paid for it, but every visit made her feel less welcome. The living room had changed again. New furniture filled the space. Linda's taste was everywhere. There were expensive decorations on the shelves and framed photographs of Michael's family. Emily looked around. She saw no trace of herself. Danielle came downstairs wearing a sweater and jeans. "Mom, what happened?" Emily looked directly at her. "I came to ask you something." Danielle immediately became nervous. "What? Why doesn't Linda want me at Christmas?" Danielle sighed. "Mom, we already talked about this." "No, we talked around it. I want the truth." Danielle looked toward Michael. He quietly walked into the kitchen. "Linda thinks family gatherings should be smaller." Emily nodded. "And I am not family." "Of course you are." "Then why am I excluded?" Danielle had no answer. Emily sat down. "Danielle, look at me." "Did I do something to Linda?" "No." "Did I insult her?" "No." "Did I disrespect Michael?" "No." "Then why does she get to decide whether I can spend Christmas with my own daughter?" Danielle became frustrated. "Because she is Michael's mother." Emily stared at her. "And you are my daughter." Danielle looked away. "Mom, please." Emily's voice softened. "I am not asking you to choose between us. I am asking you to stop allowing someone else to choose for you." Danielle wiped her eyes. "You don't understand how difficult Linda can be." "I understand perfectly. I have watched it for years." "She gets angry. She stops speaking to Michael. He becomes depressed. I can't handle that." Emily nodded slowly. "So you sacrifice me because it is easier." Danielle did not answer. Emily felt something break inside her. She had hoped Danielle would finally defend her. Instead, Danielle was still protecting Linda. Emily stood up. "What about the house?" Danielle looked confused. "What about it? Do you remember who paid for it?" Danielle's face tightened. "Mom, please don't start talking about money again." "I am not talking about money. I am talking about sacrifice. You always bring up the house when you're upset." Emily stared at her. "Because the house is the only thing everyone remembers when they need something from me." Danielle's frustration exploded. "Then take your money back if it bothers you so much." The room went silent. Danielle immediately covered her mouth. She knew she had gone too far. "Mom, I didn't mean." Emily raised one hand. "No, you did." "Mom, please. You finally said what you really think." Danielle started crying. "I'm sorry." Emily picked up her purse. "There is nothing more to discuss." She walked toward the door. Danielle followed. "Mom, please don't leave like this." Emily turned around. Her eyes were wet, but her voice remained calm. "You told me to take my money back. I think I finally understand." Then she left. She drove home slowly. Her hands were shaking on the steering wheel. For years, she had believed that being a good mother meant giving without limits. Now she wondered whether she had taught her daughter that love had no boundaries. When she arrived at her apartment, she sat at the dining table and took out her attorney's number. She called Mr. Romero. "I need you to help me sell the house." There was a pause. "Are you certain?" "Yes." "Emily, this is a serious decision." "I know. You understand that Danielle and Michael are living there?" "Yes." "Then you also understand how they may react." Emily looked at the photograph of Danielle on the shelf. "I know." Mr. Romero asked whether she wanted to wait. Emily shook her head even though he could not see her. "No." I have waited long enough. The next morning, she met him at his office. He showed her the deed and confirmed what she already knew. She was the legal owner. No transfer had ever been completed. No gift agreement existed. Emily had paid for the property and the law recognized her ownership. If you decide to sell, he said, the current occupants will have to leave according to the legal process. Emily nodded. She felt strangely calm. Then let's begin. Mr. Romero arranged for the property to be evaluated. The price was lower than Emily had originally paid because of the market, but she did not care about making a profit. She wanted her freedom. A potential buyer appeared within days. He was an investor who planned to renovate the property. He offered a reasonable price and was prepared to close quickly. Emily signed the preliminary papers. She kept everything secret. Meanwhile, Danielle continued planning Christmas. She sent Emily a message asking whether she would send the usual dessert. Emily looked at the message for a long time. Then she replied, "I will come." Danielle responded with a heart emoji. Emily felt no joy. She knew Danielle believed she was coming to celebrate. She had no idea that Emily was coming with a different purpose. A few days later, Emily received the final sale documents. The closing was scheduled for December 23rd. Christmas was only 2 days away. Emily signed everything. The house was sold. She transferred the property legally and received confirmation from her attorney. The money went into her account. She stared at the confirmation screen. She had expected to feel anger. Instead, she felt relief. But there was one final step. The lawyer prepared the legal notice requiring Danielle and Michael to vacate the property within the required period. Emily placed the document in a large envelope. She did not send it. Not yet. She wanted to deliver it herself. On Christmas Eve, she stood in front of her mirror wearing a dark blue dress. She put on the silver earrings her husband had given her years earlier. She looked at herself carefully. For the first time in months, she recognized the woman looking back at her. She was not just Danielle's mother. She was Emily Carter, a woman who had worked for everything she had, a woman who had given more than enough, a woman who had finally decided that respect mattered. She placed the envelope in her purse. Then she drove toward Danielle's house. The street was filled with Christmas lights. The house glowed at the end of the road. Emily parked outside. She took a deep breath. She was about to walk into a Christmas dinner where everyone believed the house belonged to them. They had no idea what Emily was carrying in her purse, and they had no idea that by the end of the night, their entire idea of family would change. Michael opened the door with a wide smile. He was wearing a red Christmas sweater and holding a glass of wine. "Emily." "Merry Christmas, come in." Emily smiled politely. "Merry Christmas." She stepped inside. The smell of roasted turkey filled the house. Christmas music played softly in the background. Danielle appeared from the dining room. "Mom!" She hugged Emily tightly. For a moment, Emily almost forgot everything. She almost wanted to put the envelope back in her purse and pretend nothing had happened. Then Linda appeared. "Emily, you came." Her tone sounded surprised rather than happy. Emily nodded. "Yes." Linda looked at her dress. "Very nice." Then she turned toward Danielle. "Can you check the table?" Emily walked into the living room. The house looked beautiful. It was decorated with expensive ornaments and gold ribbons. There was a huge Christmas tree near the window. Emily remembered when she had first helped Danielle choose the house. She remembered standing in the empty living room while Danielle imagined Christmas mornings there. Emily had smiled and told her daughter, "One day this will be your family's home." The memory hurt. Not because the house was gone, because Emily had believed the people inside it would value what she had done. Instead, they had slowly pushed her out. She sat in a chair near the fireplace. Michael came over. "Are you okay?" Emily looked at him. "Yes." He seemed uncomfortable. "I know things have been difficult." Emily waited. "Linda can be strong-minded," he continued. "She doesn't mean everything personally." Emily almost laughed. "Michael, you knew I wasn't invited." He looked away. "I knew there were concerns. And you said nothing." He had no answer. Emily nodded. "That's enough." She did not want to fight. She wanted to wait. At 6:30, other guests arrived. Linda's husband, David, came with a bottle of wine. Several relatives arrived with gifts. The house became crowded. Emily sat quietly and watched. Linda moved around the room like the host of an important event. She welcomed guests, checked the food, and gave instructions to Danielle. Danielle followed every request. Emily noticed how tired her daughter looked. She wondered whether Danielle was finally beginning to understand how much control Linda had over her. At 7 o'clock, everyone sat down for dinner. Emily was placed at the far end of the table. Linda sat at the head. Danielle sat beside her. Emily looked across the table at her daughter. Their eyes met for a second. Danielle smiled weakly. Emily smiled back. She did not want to embarrass her. Not yet. Linda raised her glass. "Before we eat, I want to say something." Everyone became quiet. "This year has been difficult, but I am grateful for family. I am grateful for my son. I am grateful for Danielle. And I am grateful for this beautiful home where we can all gather." Everyone raised their glasses. Emily did not. Linda noticed. Emily looked at her. "I am listening." Linda smiled. "Please raise your glass." Emily slowly lifted it. "To family," Linda said. Everyone repeated the word. Emily placed the glass down. The dinner continued. Linda talked about how much she had improved the house. She mentioned the curtains, the furniture, and the decorations. "A home needs the right touch," she said. Emily listened. Nobody mentioned that Emily had paid for the property. Nobody mentioned her sacrifices. Nobody mentioned the years she had spent helping Danielle. It was as though she had never existed. Finally, Danielle stood and began serving dessert. Emily watched her daughter carry plates from the kitchen. She looked exhausted. Emily felt a wave of sadness. This was not the revenge she had wanted. She had wanted Danielle to understand. She had wanted her daughter to realize what was happening, but perhaps this was the only way. After dessert, Emily placed her napkin on the table. "May I say something?" The room became quiet. Danielle looked at her. Michael stopped eating. Linda frowned. Emily reached into her purse. She removed the envelope and placed it on the table. "What is that?" Linda asked. Emily looked at her calmly. "A legal notice." Linda laughed. "What kind of legal notice?" Emily looked around the table. "The house has been sold." Nobody moved. Danielle's face went pale. Michael stared at Emily. "What?" Emily repeated herself. "The house has been sold." Linda suddenly laughed again. "That's impossible." Emily opened the envelope. "The sale was completed 2 days ago." Michael stood. "Emily, this isn't funny." "I am not joking." Danielle began shaking her head. "Mom, no." Emily looked at her daughter. "You told me to take my money back." Danielle's eyes filled with tears. "I was angry. I didn't mean it." "I know, but you said it." Linda stood abruptly. "You cannot do this." Emily turned toward her. "I already did." Linda's face became red. "This is Danielle's home." Emily answered quietly. "Legally, it was mine." David looked at the papers. "Linda, let me see that." She pushed the papers away. "This is ridiculous." Michael finally picked them up. He read the documents. His hands began to shake. "The deed is in Emily's name." Danielle covered her mouth. "Mom, why didn't you tell us?" Emily looked at her. "Would you have listened?" Danielle could not answer. "You told me I was not welcome at Christmas," Emily continued. "You told me Linda needed a peaceful Christmas. So I decided to give you one. You can celebrate without me." Linda pointed toward the door. "You are destroying this family." Emily shook her head. "No, Linda, I am not destroying anything. I am simply no longer paying for a family that treats me like a stranger." The room fell silent. Michael looked at Danielle. Danielle was crying. "Mom, please, we can fix this." Emily took a breath. "I hope you can." She handed Michael the legal notice. "You have the required time to leave. The new owner will handle the property after that." Michael looked at the document. "Who bought it?" Emily did not answer immediately. She knew the buyer had no connection to the family. That was important. She wanted no one to think this was a trick. "Someone who paid for it," she finally said. Linda became furious. "You will regret this." Emily stood. "Maybe, but I already regret something." Linda narrowed her eyes. "What?" Emily looked across the table. "Waiting so long to respect myself." She picked up her purse. Danielle followed her into the hallway. "Mom, please don't leave." Emily turned around. Danielle was crying. "I don't want to lose you." Emily's heart broke at those words. But she remained calm. "Then don't lose me." Danielle looked confused. "What does that mean?" "It means the house was never the real problem." Emily touched her daughter's shoulder. "The problem was that you stopped standing up for your mother." Danielle cried harder. "I am sorry." Emily nodded. I know. Then she walked toward the door. Behind her, the family remained silent around the Christmas table. The celebration was over. But Emily's story was not. Because the following morning, Danielle would discover something that would force her to make the hardest decision of her life. The morning after Christmas was quiet. Emily woke early in her apartment and made coffee. She expected anger from Danielle. She expected calls from Michael. She even expected threats from Linda. But for several hours, there was nothing. Emily sat near the window and watched the city wake up. She had imagined this moment for months. She had imagined feeling powerful after selling the house. Instead, she felt tired. Revenge had not made her happy. It had simply stopped the pain. Around 10 in the morning, her phone rang. It was Danielle. Emily stared at the screen before answering. "Hello!" There was silence on the other end. Then Danielle whispered, "Mom." Emily waited. "Can she come over?" Emily closed her eyes. "Yes." An hour later, Danielle arrived alone. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red from crying. Emily opened the door and let her in. Danielle sat on the sofa. For several minutes, neither woman spoke. Finally, Danielle said, "Michael knows you were right." Emily looked at her. "About what?" "About Linda." Emily remained quiet. Danielle continued. "He told me something last night. He said his mother has been pressuring him for years. She wanted us to sell the house and move closer to her. She said the house was too expensive to maintain and that you were using the property to control us." Emily frowned. "Control you?" Danielle nodded. "She told Michael that you would eventually demand the house back." Emily almost smiled sadly. "So she was afraid of something that was actually possible." Danielle nodded. "But there is more." Emily waited. Danielle took a breath. "Linda knew from the beginning that the house was in your name." Emily's expression changed. "How?" "Michael told her. Before we moved in, he showed her the paperwork because he wanted advice about the property." Emily felt a cold feeling in her chest. "And she knew I paid for it." "Yes." Danielle looked down. "She knew everything." Emily stood and walked toward the window. Suddenly, many things made sense. Linda had not simply disliked her. Linda had understood that Emily had power over the property. That was why she had pushed Danielle away from her mother. That was why she wanted control of the family. Emily turned around. "Danielle, why didn't you tell me?" Danielle began crying again. "Because I was scared. Of Linda." "Yes, and of losing Michael." Danielle nodded. "I thought if I kept everyone happy, things would become easier." Emily sat across from her. "Did they?" Danielle shook her head. "No." There was a long silence. Then Danielle said something Emily had never expected. "Mom, Linda told me that if I stayed close to you, Michael would eventually choose between us." Emily looked at her daughter. "And you believed her?" "I was afraid." Emily sighed. "You should have trusted me." Danielle nodded. "I know." For the first time, Emily saw the truth clearly. Danielle had not stopped loving her. She had become afraid of conflict. She had allowed another person to make decisions for her. That did not excuse what she had done, but it explained it. Emily reached across the table. "Danielle, I love you." Danielle began crying. "I love you too. But love cannot continue like this." Danielle nodded. "I understand." "The house is gone," Emily said. "I cannot change that." Danielle wiped her face. "I don't care about the house anymore." Emily looked at her carefully. "Then what do you care about?" Danielle answered immediately. "My mother." Emily's heart softened, but she did not rush to forgive. "Then you need to prove that." Danielle nodded. "How?" "By setting boundaries. With Linda. With everyone." Danielle looked down. "Michael is angry with you." Emily smiled faintly. "He has the right to be." "He said something else." Emily waited. Danielle looked at her. "He said you did what you had to do." Emily was surprised. "He really said that?" Danielle nodded. "He said we were living in a house we never appreciated. He said we made you feel like a guest, and he said he understood why you finally stopped helping us." Emily leaned back. She had expected Michael to hate her. She had not expected him to understand. "Where are you going to live?" she asked. Danielle sighed. "We are looking for an apartment. We have some savings, but it will be difficult." Emily nodded. "You will manage." Danielle looked at her hopefully. "Can you help?" Emily paused. This was the moment she had feared. The old Emily would have opened her wallet immediately. She would have offered money, furniture, and a place to stay. But the new Emily knew that helping too much could bring them back to the same pattern. I can help you make a budget, she said. I can help you find a place, but I will not pay for another home. Danielle nodded. That's fair. And Linda cannot control our relationship anymore. Danielle took a deep breath. She will be angry. Let her be angry. Danielle smiled through her tears. That sounds like something you would never have said before. Emily smiled. Maybe I finally learned. They hugged. It was not the perfect reunion. There was still pain between them, but it was honest. Meanwhile, across town, Linda was furious. She called Michael repeatedly. She accused Emily of betrayal. She said Danielle needed to cut contact with her, but this time Michael did not agree. He finally told his mother that enough was enough. You cannot decide who Danielle speaks to, Linda shouted. I am your mother, Michael answered, and Emily is Danielle's mother. Linda went silent. It was the first time Michael had ever challenged her so directly. If you want to be part of our lives, he continued, you need to stop controlling them. Linda hung up. The family was changing, not because Emily had demanded it, not because she had shouted. She had simply stopped accepting the old rules. A few weeks later, Danielle visited Emily again. She brought a small gift. It was a framed photograph. Emily opened it and froze. It was an old picture of Emily and Danielle together. Danielle had found the original photograph that had disappeared from the house. I wanted you to have this, she said. Emily touched the frame. Thank you. Danielle smiled. I also wanted to tell you something. What? I told Linda that if she wants a relationship with me, she has to respect my relationship with you. Emily looked at her daughter. And what did she say? Danielle smiled sadly. She said I had changed. Emily smiled. You have. Danielle sat beside her. Is that good? Emily took her hand. Yes, but neither of them knew that Linda was not finished. And the next thing she did would test whether Danielle had truly learned to stand on her own. 3 months passed after the sale of the house. Emily's life became quieter. She no longer woke up wondering whether Danielle would call. She no longer checked her phone every few minutes. She stopped trying to earn a place in a family that had once made her feel invisible. The money from the sale gave her financial security, but that was not what mattered most. What mattered was the freedom to make decisions without guilt. Danielle and Michael moved into a smaller apartment. It was not as impressive as the old house, but Danielle told Emily that she slept better there. There is less space, she joked during one visit, but somehow it feels bigger. Emily understood what she meant. There was less pressure, less pretending, less control. Danielle started visiting her mother every Sunday again. Sometimes they cooked together, sometimes they went for coffee, sometimes they simply sat and talked. Emily did not expect the relationship to return to exactly what it had been before. She knew some things could not be forgotten, but they could be healed, slowly. One afternoon, Danielle arrived with a worried expression. Mom, Linda called. Emily looked up from her book. What did she want? Danielle sat down. She wants to apologize. Emily was surprised. Does she? Danielle nodded. She says she realizes she went too far. Emily thought for a moment. Do you believe her? I don't know. Emily closed her book. Then don't decide today. Danielle looked at her. What should I do? Listen, then watch what she does. Danielle smiled. You really have changed. Emily laughed softly. Maybe I just stopped being afraid. The following weekend, Danielle invited Linda to meet at a neutral place. Michael came too. Emily was not there. Danielle wanted to handle the conversation herself. Linda arrived expecting the old Danielle, the daughter who apologized quickly, the daughter who avoided conflict, the daughter who changed plans whenever Linda became angry. But that Danielle was gone. Danielle calmly explained that she loved her mother-in-law, but she would no longer allow anyone to disrespect Emily. Linda tried to argue. Danielle listened. When Linda finished, Danielle simply said, You do not have to like my mother, but you have to respect her. Linda looked at Michael. He nodded. For the first time, both of them stood together. Linda had lost the control she once had. She could no longer use anger to make everyone obey her. The family did not become perfect after that. Linda remained difficult. She still had strong opinions. But she could no longer erase Emily from family events. Danielle made her own decisions. Michael stopped allowing his mother to control his marriage. And Emily stopped measuring her worth by whether they invited her somewhere. 1 year later, Christmas arrived again. This time, Danielle called Emily weeks before the holiday. "Mom, are you free for Christmas?" Emily smiled. "I think so," Danielle laughed. "Good, because I want you there." Emily asked. "Where?" Danielle said. "Our apartment." Emily paused. "Are you sure?" Danielle laughed. "Mom, I am inviting you myself." Emily agreed. On Christmas Eve, she arrived carrying a small homemade pie. Danielle opened the door and hugged her. Michael welcomed her warmly. The apartment was small, but it was filled with laughter. There was no giant dining room, no expensive decorations, no perfect table. But Emily felt something she had not felt in years. She felt wanted. During dinner, Danielle raised her glass. "To family," Emily smiled. "To family." Danielle looked at her mother. "And to people who finally learned to appreciate the people who love them." Everyone smiled. Emily looked around the table. She realized that the greatest revenge had never been the house. It had never been the money. It had never been the eviction notice. The greatest revenge was watching her daughter finally become strong enough to make her own choices. Emily had once believed that taking back the house would destroy her relationship with Danielle. Instead, it had exposed the truth. It had forced everyone to stop pretending. It had shown Danielle what unconditional love really meant. Love was not allowing someone to hurt you forever. Love was not paying for everything while remaining silent. Love was not accepting disrespect just to keep peace. Sometimes love required a boundary. Sometimes it required walking away. And sometimes, when people believed they had taken everything from you, the most powerful thing you could do was quietly take your life back. After dinner, Danielle gave Emily another gift. It was a small wooden box. Emily opened it and found the silver bracelet she had once bought for Danielle, the same bracelet she had kept hidden in a drawer for years. Danielle had somehow found it. The words inside the heart still read, "Mother and daughter." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You kept this?" Danielle asked. Emily nodded. "I couldn't throw it away." Danielle took her hand. "Neither could I." They hugged for a long time. Emily knew their relationship would never be exactly the same again, but perhaps that was not a bad thing. It was finally becoming something healthier, something honest, something based on respect instead of sacrifice. The old house was gone. Linda's control was gone. The years of silent resentment were slowly disappearing. Emily had lost a house, but she had gained something far more valuable. She had gained herself back. And when she drove home that Christmas night, she passed the street where the old house once stood. The lights were still glowing. A new family lived there now. Emily slowed down for a moment, looked at the house, and smiled. She did not feel anger. She did not feel regret. She simply drove on. Because the house had never been her real home. Her real home was wherever she could live without begging to be respected. And finally, Emily understood something she wished she had learned years earlier. Sometimes the strongest revenge is not making someone suffer. Sometimes it is refusing to suffer for them anymore. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.